Back in the 1980s and 1990s, if you had a big family and you needed a big family car to carry them around in, then of course you could buy an MPV. And there was loads of them. Pretty much every manufacturer did them. You know, the Toyota Previa, the Renault Espace, the Mitsubishi Space Wagon, the Chrysler Voyager, the Volkswagen Chiron, the Ford Galaxy, But then, of course, the crossover and the SUV started to take over, and there's plenty of sort of like SUVs around that can seat up to 7. But MPVs are still a thing, you know, and they still make a few MPVs, even electric ones. And one of the ones that I always used to really like when we road tested it 4 years ago now was the Mercedes-Benz EQV. I thought it was quite good. It was big, it was posh, it was comfy. Yeah, there was a lot to like about it. But we know how much and how fast the EV world changes. And Mercedes-Benz have given a little update to their EQV. So I thought it best to get it back in and see if it's still as competitive as it once was. Welcome to this week's road test review. Welcome to the newly revised Mercedes-Benz EQV300. And as always, welcome to AutoEV. Now, before I start on this week's road test review of the revised Mercedes-Benz EQV300, would you mind ever so much just making sure that you're subscribed to the AutoEV channel? Go on, it'll just take you a second or so. Just make sure you've ticked the wee subscribe button down there. Once you've done that, make sure you then press the little bell button as well, because that means you'll get notified when the next video is uploaded and it's gone live. And of course, once you've watched the video, if you do enjoy it, and obviously I hope you do, then give it a little thumbs up and leave us your thoughts in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think about the cars review on the channel, such as the EQV300s from Mercedes-Benz and of course on the AutoEV channel as a whole. So as I say, 4 years ago that I first drove the EQV300, and actually I did quite like it. Seemed like a nice way to transport a lot of people around in a big comfy, well, plush van effectively in some respects, under electric power. But as I say, things have changed since then. Things move on, and of course SUVs are still king, and of course there's more 7-seat SUVs available on the market. You know, there's the brilliant Kia EV9. Mercedes-Benz themselves make the EQS SUV, a 7-seat all-electric SUV. And of course, there are some people carriers around. Most of them tend to be a little bit cheaper than this. You know, things like the Peugeot e-Rifter, Citroën Berlingo, Vauxhall Combo Life, and things like that. But of course, a few weeks ago, as you know, we road tested the long wheelbase version of the Volkswagen ID Buzz, which I think is an excellent people carrier. Now, the thing about the EQV is this. And it brought it home to me the other week, because the other week I was in Barcelona on a press launch, and we were picked up and then taken back to the airport, to the venue, in EQVs. And I thought, as a passenger, there's a lot to like about this car. You know, it's big, it's comfortable, it's spacious. But as a driver, as a private owner, does it still tick a lot of those boxes? Because let's be honest, it is essentially just a big Mercedes van with some seats inside. But Mercedes-Benz assured us that it's got a real focus on luxury and a real focus on premium sort of like qualities. And that's what they fed into this newly revised EQV300. So in a world of the Kia EV9 and the Volkswagen ID Buzz, forgetting sort of like the corporate shuttle stuff aside, is this a worthy consideration as a private buyer? In other words, if you have a large family, if you rival the Von Trapps for your collection of child seats, should you be considering one of these? But as always, it's probably a good time before we start the full review just to look at the main bullet points about the new Mercedes-Benz EQV300. So as I said, the EQV is Mercedes-Benz full-size luxury MPV. The car features a 90 kilowatt-hour battery for a WLTP range of up to 222 miles. 2 lengths are available, either this one, the long, or the extra long. In 2024, the EQV received some new styling to the exterior, a revised interior, and enhancements to the interior technology to make it even more easier to use. And it's priced from just over £92,000 depending on model, wheelbase, trim and options that you choose. Now, no matter which way you cut that particular slice of cake, the £92,000 cake, that's an awful lot of money. But then Mercedes-Benz are at pains to point out that this is a premium product and therefore demands a premium price tag. Thing is, in this day and age, is it worth it? Well, of course, the only way we can find that out is by putting it back through the road test that actual car buyers trust when it comes to choosing their next electric vehicle. And that is the AutoEV one. So let's start by talking about the huge amount of styling changes that Mercedes-Benz have made to the EQV. It's got a new grille. That's pretty much it, really. New grille at the front, big plastic grille, big Mercedes-Benz 3-pointed star slat bang in the centre, nice little camera, forward-facing camera tucked underneath it. There is a lot more tech on the car, in fairness. They've put a lot of tech on it. So you get your forward-facing camera there, the Mercedes-Benz obviously badge up on the bonnet there, a little bit of cooling down at the bottom, not much in fairness though. But you do get some new headlights. Ooh, I hear you all say, calm down, Brian. But they are actually quite good, these adaptive multi-beam LEDs. And at night they give a good broad spread of light on country roads and stuff. So that is quite good. I do quite like the new lights. Your charging port is down in the front corner here. We'll talk obviously about charging later, but that's where your charging port is. Which in fairness is all right, because if it's halfway down the door, then that's no good at all. At least you can just pull into a parking bay and start charging up. And of course there's a bit of a bonnet there, isn't there? There always was though in the EQV, in fairness. But it does bring it in more in line with the other sort of like models in the Mercedes-Benz's EQ range, you know, the EQE, the EQS, and of course the SUV models that they go with that sort of big plastic grille. But yeah, there's not really an awful lot changed there, is there? Let's see if they've done a bit more around the back, but I wouldn't get ahead of yourself, because they haven't. Now down the side of the car, and its side profile, you realise how big it actually is. It's over 5.5 metres long, this thing. It's huge. You get two sizes. You get the long, which this one is, and an extra long. Innovative name, well done Mercedes-Benz. So that's basically the two sizes you get. You don't get a short and a medium, you start with the long, which this car is here, which is, well, long, yeah, 5.5 metres. 17-inch alloy wheels, and it'll depend, the extra long gets different wheels to that. But they've done away with the roof rails. Although I've seen pictures of them with the roof rails, but I trawled through the press release and the brochure, you know, on the Mercedes-Benz UK stuff. There's no mention of roof rails. So I don't even know if they're an option. But I quite liked it, the roof rails, because now, dare I say, it looks even more like a van than it did before. That's the downside with it, isn't it? Because it is effectively like the Vito van. You know, it is that sort of body style. So by doing away with the roof rails, they've made it look less like an MPV and more like a commercial vehicle, but they're charging more money for it. Anyway, there we go. You do get, he says, twin electric sliding doors on the car. So you do get that. So on both sides you do get the electric doors, which is quite nice to have, obviously, although I don't know quite what was wrong with just pulling a door open yourself, but there you go. And of course you do obviously get the privacy glass on the back as well, you know, and sort of, you know, from the B pillar backwards you get privacy glass. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It's just a big van shape with electric doors and seats inside. Round the back, you spot the changes? This is Mercedes-Benz on there, along that plinth. It's quite nice, that, quite like that. New badging, upright tail lights, they've got a slight redesign. You've still got the split tailgate, so you can just open up the glass section if you just want to drop stuff in. I do like that, that's quite handy. And it does have a full electric tailgate, as you'll see in a minute. And of course it's got a very sort of like low load sill bumper area, if you like, I suppose. Obviously, as I say, there's loads of tech on the car. There is a camera, where the bloody hell is it? There's a camera somewhere as well. It's probably tucked underneath there, but you get a rear obviously mounted camera, and you obviously get parking sensors as well. But there's nothing exciting here to look at, nothing to see here, folks. It's certainly not sort of like as sort of like stylish and as, like, you know, look twice at it as the Volkswagen ID Buzz, which in fairness you've got to consider. If we're talking about private buyers, you've got to consider that as a rival. Now obviously we're going to talk about competition in the competition section, but that is what it's up against. But what do you think? I'm a bit disappointed, if I'm honest with you. And it's funny because, as I say, there was pictures of it, you know, looking a bit plush, and, you know, the chrome kind of roof rails and stuff like that, and you think, oh, that could be, you know, a real proper, real luxury type of thing. But actually, when you see it in the flesh, especially the roads are filthy at the moment. I apologise because I've been using it this week. It is filthy. It doesn't really stand out. It does, especially in this, I think it's called Solidite Blue. It does just look like a Vito van. Or am I just being unduly cruel to it? What do you think about it? Would this tempt you instead of, say, a Volkswagen ID Buzz long wheelbase, or a Kia EV9, or, you know, one of those 7-seat SUVs we're talking about? Would you plump for this? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Right, when it comes to practicality, of course, there is no doubt this thing is going to be huge inside. And as I say, there's a couple of things I really do like about it. The first thing is this: you can just open the glass hatch. Now, that is handy because, as you'll see in a second, that's quite a practical thing to have. So if you're just dropping in things like, you know, rucksack, even, you know, sort of like travel, you know, carry-ons, things like that, you can just drop them in there. So that gives you enough space to get stuff in. However, if you do need to get the full width, or the full height, I should say, of the boot, you got to stand back. You got to make sure you don't pull up too close to a wall, because that is huge, that tailgate. But look, that's just brilliant, you know, and it's way down there. That's below my knees, and I'm a shorty. And as you can see, well, I've got 4 suitcases in there, plus the cable bag, plus the rucksack, and there's bags more space, literally. So I think the total capacity with all the seats up is over 500 litres. And if you knock all this, because you can fold the seats down, you can take them out, you can do what you like with them, then it is thousands of litres that's, you know, space, because it is effectively just then a van. So that is a vast amount of space. There is no getting away from that. However, what I will say, there's no real sort of like surprise and delight features in here. That's it. You can slide the seats forward and back to give more space inside, but you know, there's no power takeoff in the boot. You know, there's no sort of like you know, sort of like plug sockets and things like that, so you can charge up. You know, if you and your family were out, I don't know, you went for a picnic somewhere and you take a little, I don't know, an electric kettle or something like that. There's none of that in the boot, which would have been nice to have in some respects. And I'm surprised maybe Mercedes-Benz, going on the luxury thing, don't offer more of those style of things for the boot of the car. But if it's just space you're after, you've got plenty of it. The other thing that is worth pointing out as well is, look at the actual sort of like aperture there. The struts are on the outside of it as well. So again, if maybe you're looking at it from the point of view of wheelchair conversion, or a camper van as well, you never know, then that size of aperture is going to be really handy for getting a ramp up to it, or as I say, for being able to slide those, you know, if you're putting camper stuff into it, for being able to slide things in and out of it. But yeah, it's not lacking in space. It is lacking in some features, but not space. So like I say, there's electric sliding doors, so you can get easy access in. But to get actually into the rear of the car, it's a handle there, and you tip those seats forward. So I've tipped that one forward so you can see me getting in and out. And then, there you go there. Now, as I said, we were in, I was in Barcelona the other week, lucky me, reviewing a couple of new cars. You'll see one of them coming onto AutoEV, you'll see another couple on House of Cars, my other channel. And we were picked up from the airport in these, and obviously, you know, sort of like there was a few of us. You know, there was 6 of us, you know, being picked up, and there was a fleet of these picking us up, and one had just saw it was, you know, laid out like this sort of 5-seat layout in the back. One had it so that these were turned around the other way, because you can take these out, you know, face each other, which is quite nice if you're all having a wee chat or doing stuff. And you can also get it as a 7-seated as well. So sorry, 8-seating complete. So in other words, you've got a bench in the middle there rather than the 2 separate captain's chairs. So you can have that as well if you want. What's it like back here? Well, certainly in terms of space, you don't have any problems. You know, I've got vast amount of space. I haven't moved these seats from where that luggage was, and there's still a load of space here. And they're comfortable seats. You know, they've all got 3-point belts. You've got ISOFIX points on this middle one here. There's a cup holder here. There's some coat hooks here, and there's ventilation there. But there's just a 12-volt socket back there. Again, there's no USB-C ports or things like that for kids charging devices, and there's, dare I suggest, no USB with the car. You know, in terms of what it is, there's nothing. This is it. That's all you have. You know, it's just a big load of space. Now, obviously, in some respects, maybe that's all you want. But thinking about it from the corporate shuttle style of view as well, might it not have been handy maybe to have some sort of like electrical ports back here, so at least you could maybe sit with a laptop? Just a thought, you know. But if you're, you know, going back to and from an airport and stuff like that, you're about to go and do a presentation, you know, to be able to sit, plug your laptop in, and just be able to sort of like bang out sort of like, you know, a slide deck or whatever, you know, or transfer it across to someone. That type of thing I thought might have been sort of like on Mercedes' radar, but there's none of that. But you can't complain about the space. That's the one thing I will say. And it's the same in this row as well. You know, so if I get in this row, you know, with these two captain's chairs, that's all right, isn't it? Now, obviously these, he says, these do recline as well, and if I can find where the thing is, you can slide them on that rail. So again, you know, if you've got someone that's really tall, or maybe don't have people right in the back, you can really slide this back and give yourself loads of room. But again, where's the sort of like bits and pieces? Do you know what I mean? You know, you think at this price level there'd be, you know, as I say, there isn't a USB port to be seen in this middle here, not on this pillar or anything like that. You know, there's none of that. You know, I thought they would have maybe done something, you know, or a table or something, you know, where you could maybe, now I'm saying you could maybe get those as options, but it doesn't really sort of like suggest that within the press pack. But that's the type of thing I'm thinking of. There's a good walk through, you know, you can walk, you know, sort of like from the driver front passenger seat all the way through to the back. So again, if you've got kids and they're argy-bargy, you can get out and give them a good cuff round. Only you're supposed to do that these days. But you know what I mean? You can go through and give them a good telling off. Put them on a timeout. ISOFIX points, well, of course you get those as well, so of course you get child seats in the car, and as I say, you can get it so that you can have a 3 across here rather than just the 2. But yeah, I'm just a little bit disappointed that there isn't, at this price point, there isn't just a little bit more. You know, as I say, there's nothing really here. You've got ventilation here, you've got some lights, and you've got some rear climate control systems, controls up on the roof. That's it. You know, there's no power sockets or anything like that. There's no table, there's no flip out cup. There's a little sort of like door bin in the electric sliding doors, but you know, not enough for a water bottle to stand upright in here. It is just all about space, that's it. The seats themselves, they're okay, they're quite comfortable. As I say, I did a journey in them last week, not a particularly long journey, but you know, they're okay. And I would think even actually for a longer drive, this would be quite nice. You know, if you're heading up to, I don't know, heading up to Scotland or down to Cornwall or something from me, or across France or something, you know, certainly my daughter would quite like this, the fact that you've got a bit of space, but she wouldn't like the fact she can't charge anything from back here. She wouldn't like the fact that she can't put her bits and pieces down somewhere, you know, and sort of like have a little fold-out table or a cup holder, as I say, or charger, or Kindle or stuff like that from the back. So yeah, a little bit disappointed from that point of view, but certainly enough space. Right, up at the front, let's start it up. Oh, hello. Gosh, that was loud. Right, what have we got here? Well, this actually is a big change, and this is very good indeed. I do like it up here. So there is a nice sort of like driver front passenger environment. There's a lot to discuss, there's a lot changed, and there's a lot of good things here, I think. So we start with the familiar Mercedes-Benz MBUX user interface system. Hang on a second, let me just turn that fan speed down. There we go. No, we don't want it in auto. Just turn it. I'm sure it has. Shush. Right. So you get the MBUX system here, which I still think is one of the best and easiest to use. I really like it. And it's a touch screen. So as you can see there, you can swipe through your various bits and pieces that you need there. Okay. You can also use this touchpad as well, which is really handy because that is a little bit of a stretch. Not ridiculous amount, but you know, it's a little bit of a stretch forward. But if you do want, you can just use this as a, and it is quite nice, I have to say, you know. So you go into settings, and then of course it's like a trackpad on your Apple Mac. You know, you just, that's exactly what it's like. You just go up and you go down, you go through the bits. It takes a little while just to sort of be, you don't have to be too, you know, too rough with it, you know, to get things to work. So a lot of things there to like there. So that's very, very good. It's got a wireless Apple CarPlay. I think it's wired Android Auto, in fairness. But, you know, as I say, it works and it's all very good. You get things like, you know, the actual Mercedes-Benz navigation system, which again is quick to respond, works really, really well. It also now has an augmented reality. by using the front camera. This is one of those things I was talking about, new tech that's in the car. So you get augmented reality in it. And also as well, it's because it's the updated system. It's got other things such as, you know, it'll sort out your charging for you. So if you're driving along and obviously it needs to charge up, it can tell you where to stop and charge, and it'll prioritise bays, maybe where there's more charging. That'll tell you how many bays are in use, I think, as well. You know, if you're coming up to a particular, you know, sort of like a multi sort of like charging station where they've got 2 or 3 different chargers, it'll tell you if they're in use. So there's a lot more sort of like intricacies, and also, as I say, it'll do things like, I think it also preconditions the battery as well, but I'd need to maybe check that. But it's very good, and I really like it, and I've always liked it. I think, you know, that Mercedes-Benz do really, really well with this user interface system. It's really easy to use. It's slick. It's got nice graphics on it. It's just right. I like it, and I think the design of it is quite pleasing. I have to say, I do like this. You know, they were one of the first to do this sort of twin screen styles, and it still looks like a Mercedes-Benz. You know, because you still get on the driver's side, on this side, this 12.3-inch screen, you get your dials there. And obviously you can configure that to show you different things, depending obviously on what you want. So, you know, you can change the actual sort of like dial of it. You know, you just want full navigation. Look, you can have 2 maps. I mean, that's quite good, isn't it? You know, you can do stuff like that. You can have your assistant systems. You can have the classic design. You can have the sport design. You can have understated design. You know, yeah, I like that. And then obviously when you're in there, there are various obviously different things, pieces you can use it to see. The only downside is, you see, there's your trip computers in there, see, then your eco display and your range and stuff. The only downside is Mercedes-Benz are one of the companies that use the touch sensitive controls. Now, what I will say is 2 things about them. First of all, they are better than the Volkswagen Group ones. They're not quite as sensitive as that, and Mercedes do tend to put them slightly further in. This is a new steering wheel as well. They do tend to put them slightly further in the steering wheel, so it is a lot harder to brush it by accident. Okay, I still don't think they're as good as normal buttons. I still think I'd actually just quite like to see buttons, but you know I'm a bit of an old fogey for stuff like that. But in fairness, as I say, of all the ones, if you're going to have touch sensitive buttons, these guys seem to do it best. Okay, so that's that. Nice new screens, nice readout. It's really clear, it's really easy to see. That's easy to use. You can use it as a touchscreen, you can use the trackpad. Oh, and I forgot to mention, there are some shortcut buttons around the trackpad. So if you want to go straight to radio and media, you just press the button, it takes you straight there. You want to go to your navigation, you go straight there. You want to go to your camera systems, you go straight there, okay? You want to go to your settings, your functions, you go straight there. Now, one last thing, just talking about this screen that I really like. As you know, you've got to have these ADAS systems come on the car as standard now. So you're driving along, you get speed limit warning, and it does beep at you, you go above the speed limit. To turn it off in this, you just press that little, where the speed limit sign is on the screen. Simple as that, switches it off. Brilliant, fantastic, really like that. And things for like lane keep assist, if you press the car settings there, you see how that drops down, active lane keep assist, turn it off. So really simple shortcut buttons, really like that, brilliant. Thank you, Mercedes, you've really thought about that. That's fabulous. You've also got physical buttons for your volume control for the radio, as well as the slider obviously on the steering wheel. There is actually a thumb wheel here so the passenger can use it. You've got opening and closing of the rear doors, big physical buttons there. And then you've got this bank of physical buttons here, which is all your climate control system. So temperature out at the side, the actual menu, if you want to bring up the menu on there, you do that. And then of course fan speed automatic, defrost screens and all the rest of it, okay? So that's that. The design of it, I've got to say, I really like as well. You know, really nice design. You get this sort of open pore matte finish wood here as well, which looks good. One thing I will say is the car that I was in the other week had the light interior, had the light beige interior, which really highlighted that and made it feel quite warm in here, made it feel quite luxurious. With the black, I don't know it works quite as well, but you know, I appreciate from a practical point of view, the black might work better for you, especially more in weather like we get in the UK. I mean, my boots are all muddy getting in and out of the car today. So, you know, I do appreciate that the black is a little bit easier to sort of like keep clean. But as I say, if you do go for the beige, it really lightens it up and makes it feel a bit warmer and more luxurious. But yeah, I like the design of the dashboard. You get nice ambient lighting just underneath that metal strip on the dash as well. The steering wheel's new, as I said. You've got the touch sensitive controls there. Lights and wipers are all on the one column stock, as they have been with Mercedes for a long time. So, you know, indicators, push away from main beam, pull back for dip. You've also got automatic high beam assist. And you've got your wipers by turning the stock, and then the rear wipers on the little button there. And then the other column stock on this side is your actual transmission selector. So down for drive, up for neutral, up for reverse, and push at the end for park. No difference there. You've got paddles behind the steering wheel for the brake regen, which we'll talk about when we're out driving. Nice clicky air vents out on the side, not quite as plastic as they are in some other Mercedes-Benz models, but still not as nice, maybe dare I suggest nice metal ones as I'd like to see at this price point. The seats, well, the seats are like the ones you get just in the second row there, these captain's chairs, and you do sit really nicely. You can extend the squab manually out in them, so they pull out manually, so you get a bit more support underneath your thighs. There's a reasonable amount of lateral support. You've got the armrest in the middle. You've got a nice height of armrest on the door. You've also, you know, rest your arm on the windowsill as well, you know, which gives you a nice driving position. You've got a good commanding view out. Nothing interrupts the view, so you've got a good view out the front screen. Good big door mirrors. And a standard mirror at the back. No camera system on that mirror. That might have been quite good to have as well. You know, if you're full of people and you need to see out the back, then it'd be nice maybe if you had a camera like some manufacturers do, but they don't. There we go. What have I done there? Why did it do that? Oh, I don't know why. Right, anyway, what have we got down here? I've got two cup holders, which will take my big Yeti coffee flask in there, plus a wireless charging pad down in there. That is excellent. But again, no sort of big storage box or something, you know, you could maybe take in and out. That would have been nice to see. The door bins, there's it's really odd. There's one sort of halfway up the door, which will take nothing but a Mars bar, I'd say. And even then, it won't be one of those double Mars bars. It'll just be a single one. And thankfully, they've made them smaller. That's the only time you can appreciate a smaller Mars bar, because that's when it's going to fit in there. And then the door bin itself is way, way down there. So it's quite a stretch down. And it's shaped for a water bottle and some bits and pieces. But it feels quite cheap, the plastic on the door. That's the only thing I'd say about that. There's a button on the door panel for your heated seats, however, which is quite nice. You'd have to go into the screen for the heated seats. You just push the button on the door, and it's 3-stage heating for the seats. However, I have to say, and I have to complain about this, manual seat adjustment. £92,000, and I've got to move the seat myself. Now, I know some people are going to say, don't be so precious. You know, at the end of the day, what do you expect? Well, I expect electric seats on a £92,000 car. That's what I expect. You know, my wife and I drive the car, you know, sort of like our cars, and she's got a completely different driving position to me. To fiddle around with it, and you've got to get your hand in the side. Come on, what's going on? Why does it have to be manual? Anyway, that's pretty much my only real complaint, is manual seats, and as I say, some of the plastics further down the doors just don't feel that premium. And there is a little bit of lack of storage up here, but that's the same as my gripe in the back. But all of this, I like. I like all of this. This is good. That's easy to see, that's easy to read, that's easy to use. You can use it as a touchscreen, you can use it as a pad. Passenger can use it. You've got physical controls for the stuff you need. It's easy to turn things on and off that you don't want on. You've got a really good driving position. You've got a really good view forward. I have to say, from that point of view, the EQV is still a real winner. And when it comes to sort of like from the driver's point of view and the front passenger in terms of the cabin, it was just nice to have seen a little bit more thought and just a little bit more, the bits and pieces I'll call them, be put into it. But otherwise, it's good. Right, things are starting to crumble a little bit here, as far as I'm concerned. 90 kilowatt hour battery, unchanged from before, which gives a WLTP range of 222 miles. Now, we all know WLTP figures are ambitious, to say the least, because they're done in perfect conditions, and we're never driving around electric cars in perfect conditions. It's cold at the moment, it's 4 degrees outside at the moment. You know, I'm not seeing that from the car. You know, load it up with 7 people plus luggage. You're not going to see that from the car, even in terms of, you know, the milder months or the summer months. I'd be surprised if you got 200 miles out of it, you know, when you're driving the car around full of people and luggage. So from that point of view, a 90 kilowatt hour battery delivering that sort of WLTP mileage. Also as well, the problem I also have is charging speeds. 100 kilowatts, that's it. Just 100 kilowatts, which means on a big battery like that, if you're going from 10 to 80%, which is your normal benchmark charging, you know, it's 45 minutes. Now, if you're using, forget about it from a family point of view at the moment, okay? If you are using this as a private shuttle, and a private shuttle service, that's 45 minutes the car's not earning you money. Do you know what I mean? You know, if you've got a driver out there picking up passengers from Heathrow, dropping them into the middle of London, and they've got to stop before he goes on to his next job for 45 minutes, that's not brilliant, is it? You know, that needs to be better. Anyway, 11 kilowatt onboard charger, however, is standard, thank God. But if you're using a more likely 7 kilowatt wall box from a home wall box like I have, then it's 14.5 hours to charge this thing from flat to full. But hopefully that 11 kilowatt, if you've got a base, or you've got offices, or you know, wherever you operate out of, if you're using these as private shuttles, you need to get in that 3-phase electricity, because that will bring that time down. But yeah, it's a little bit disappointing, I have to say, from that point of view. Right, let's get out on the road in the EQV and see what we've got. 204 horsepower is what the single motor delivers to the front wheels. 0 to 60, 12.1 seconds. So it's fair to say that you're not buying this because you want to get anywhere quickly. The thing is, that's empty as well. You know, you start putting luggage and people, and that's what I was saying about the range. You know, you start to add all that weight into the car, and it's going to have an effect on it. It's going to have an effect on its range, it's going to have an effect on its performance as well. But I do get it, you're not buying it because you want to get someone to go quickly. Right, okay, so look, I don't want to be too negative about this car, because as I say, 4 years ago I really liked it. And I still do like a lot of it. You know, there's a lot to like. As I say, this part here, you know, the driver interface, brilliant, absolutely fabulous. You know, the MBUX system is superb to use, really nice, clear on the move, it's up in your line of sight. I really like all of that, that's excellent. And this trackpad stuff here, that's excellent too. And obviously, as I've said before, we're not going to judge the car on its handling, because it's a big van effectively that's full of seats, so therefore, you know, it isn't going to be something you're going to be throwing down, you know, sort of the lovely back roads of Sussex, or, you know, down the Bremer Pass, is it? You know, no, of course not. However, it needs to drive nicely, because if you are using it as a private buyer, and you've got your family and your kids in it and stuff like that, you know, you want to be comfortable. And if you're using it from a business point of view, you know, you're a private hire driver, or you know, you're a chauffeur service or whatever, you want to know that your drivers are comfortable and they enjoy what they're driving. And on that basis, it's not bad, okay? It's still a reasonably decent thing to drive. Don't get me wrong, you can't get away from the fact there is a whiff of commercial vehicle about it. There's no getting away from that. You do feel like you are driving a van in that sense. You know, when I was testing, I really wanted to test the two of them together with the ID Buzz long wheelbase and this, but I just got the dates all modelled up and I couldn't make it work, so I'm driving it separately. That drives like a car, you know, there's no doubt about it. The ID Buzz long wheelbase drives like a car, but you're sitting much higher up. This drives more like a van, but a very nice van. That's what I will say. So you do have a very nice seating position. The seat itself is very comfortable. As I say, you've got a good view of what you can see here. You know, the steering wheel, the new wheel, it's nice to hold. You know, it is a little bit more upright. It's not a flat, you know, sort of wheel that you're driving around in a van as such. And there's good visibility. You can see all around you. All of that's fine. It's driver controls. Oh, hang on a second. See, that's one other thing I do like. You can just turn that off by touching the little speed limit traffic sign on the screen. Brilliant, simple. Right, so the controls of it. It needs quite a firm push down on the accelerator to get some forward motion going. And I double checked the other day, when I first drove it, and I thought, well, that doesn't feel very sprightly. You know, I had to double check I wasn't driving around in eco mode, and I'm not. I'm driving around in comfort mode, the standard mode. You know, so that's one thing where you do realise that actually, oh yeah, you do need to be a bit more deliberate with the throttle. You know, pulling out of a junction, going or a roundabout or whatever, you need to make sure that you're actually, you know, pushing the accelerator pedal. Obviously there are different driving modes that you get with the car as well. There's a dynamic button here, so you can change it into sport mode. That sharpens things up, no doubt about it. And dare I suggest, the response you get from the throttle when you're in the sport mode feels more like what you would sort of expect from a normal car. So it's probably worthwhile popping it into the sport mode just to get that nicer throttle response from it. There's a much more immediate response on the throttle now. And I'm not talking about a firecracker, I'm not talking about something that, you know, an explosion happens under your feet. It doesn't. It just accelerates a bit nicer in that sense. The steering, it's a touch vague, as you'd expect. You know, it is not, as I say, judging it on pin-sharp handling. However, you know, there's still a lot of movement round about the dead ahead. There's a vagueness to it, which, you know, isn't great. You know, and you're over exaggerating your actual arm movements. You're over exaggerating your actual inputs into the car to get it to respond. And the ride quality, it's not that great when you're in it on your own. Now, that will, as I say, change when you put people and luggage in it. But let's be frank about this, you're not always going to be driving around with 6 passengers and a boot full of luggage, are you? There are going to be times where you're in the car on your own and you're driving it to work, you're driving it to pick a passenger up, you're driving it to wherever. And those times you just feel like, I don't know, it just could just do with being a little bit better on the suspension. It's just a little bit too bouncy and just a bit too, I'm going to say it, van-like. Noise isn't bad, you know, no, I'm coming up to the width restriction. I knew I shouldn't have come down here with this great big bloody thing. Never mind, let's go through it. It's not so much the width, it's the high curb on one side that gets me down here. There we go, nicely done, Brian. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, the noise. Noise isn't too bad in fairness for such a big upright thing. You know, I wouldn't say it's much noisier in here than it is in the ID Buzz. You know, it's about the same. There's a little bit more creaking and groaning because of the plastic trim around it. You know, there's a bit more than that, and of course the overall volume inside the car. You know, there's a lot of, as in space, volume inside the car. So therefore, you do find that it does make a little bit more noise. You know, there's more noise amplified within the cabin of the car than you would get in, say, a Kia EV9. You know, an EQS SUV, those kind of cars, and obviously on the Buzz as well, in fairness. There's different levels of brake regen as well. Like I said to you, you can operate that via the paddles. Best way I always think, you know, via these paddles, you just go out, you know, strong recuperation, and it is strong, it really hauls it up. You know, so round about town and sort of like, you know, sort of like local areas, if you are a fan of the one pedal driving, actually that's quite nice. You can really feel the difference. The downside then is you've really got to push the throttles to sort of like, you know, work against that. But you can easily take it off via the paddles. You can just go into normal recuperation or no recuperation at all, where the car will now just coast. So that's probably, from that point of view, you know, the best system, I think, you know, when it comes to adjusting things. I really like cars with paddles to adjust brake regen. I think it works really well. So look, overall, it's pretty much the same EQV that we drove 4 years ago. They really haven't changed it the way that it drives. Although, as I say, I don't remember it being quite so heavy on the throttle. I don't remember it being quite as, you know, needing to be quite as hefty a push to get the thing to actually get up and move. But as I say, you can alleviate that some way by just putting it into the sport mode, and that's fine. And it's one sense that, dare I suggest, the sport mode is quite nice to have. It's quite handy to have it. It just gives you that sharper throttle response, and it's quite nice. And as I say, it's comfortable to drive, and this is nice and all the rest of it. But as a family car, as a private buyer, you just can't get over the fact that, as I say, it does feel more van-like than something like the ID Buzz. And that's the thing, they do the ID Buzz as a commercial vehicle. but it's a commercial vehicle that feels more car-like. This is a car that feels more van-like, if that makes sense, and I hope it does. I'm not suggesting that it's horrible to drive, because it isn't. It's actually quite nice. And as I say, 4 years ago, I thought this was a lovely thing to drive. And in some respects, it still is. It's just that now, I think there are better options available to you. And I still can't go over the fact, as you're about to find out, how expensive it is for something that drives like this. Now, like I said right at the very, very start, this is not an inexpensive car. £92,205 in this long version. If you want the extra long, then that costs extra money. This car here, as tested, is just a shade under £93,000, and the only option fitted to it is the metallic paint. So let's be blunt about this. This is an expensive way to transport 7 people around. If you are a cash buyer, if you are a family person, there are other options that I think, dare I suggest, that are better to you. But £93,000 on a car that will struggle to do 200 miles. And this is where I really have a problem with this car. When we tested this car 4 years ago, there really wasn't anything out there that you could really compare it to. There was much cheaper options, you know, and it was 70 grand back then. It's gone up £20,000. We're now at a price point where you've really got to think about this. And there are now alternative options out there. Even if you do run sort of like, you know, a private shuttle service, even if you're using this as a business tool, there are other options that, dare I suggest, that are out there that cost less money. Because let's be honest with you, I mean, yes, it wears a Mercedes-Benz badge, yes, it's quite nice to drive, but at the end of the day, it is still a van with seats. We can't get away from that fact. That's exactly what it is, you know. So when we think about the competition, you can go very much cheaper, again, if you're into those kind of, as I say, that business style of scenario, where you've got things such as the Citroen E-Space Tourer, the Peugeot Passenger, the Vauxhall Vivaro, those type of cars that you could use. Of course, Ford as well, they're getting in on the act now with the new Transit Custom. Well, they call it the Tourneo, don't they? Tourneo? You know, with the seating version of the Transit Custom. That's a great car. I haven't driven it. You know, a lot of people have said to me, it's absolutely, you know, to drive the new Transit Custom is a brilliant car. The big Transit's a good van. You know, we've tested that. So I can imagine that that's going to be a good car. Are you really going to be that upset if you're picked up from the airport in a Ford Transit Tourneo rather than a Mercedes-Benz EQV? I don't think you are. I don't think you're going to be that bothered about it. Anyway, from a private buyer's point of view, there's some real differences out there. Real alternatives, sorry, not differences, real alternatives out there for you if you just need to transport your family around. And of course, the big one for me, of course, is the Volkswagen ID Buzz, the long wheelbase version now, which is much more efficient, comes with a bigger battery, drives more car-like. Still funky, isn't it? You know, it looks great. Your kids love it. You know, my daughter and her friend got in this yesterday and they weren't that fussed. It was like, just jumped the back and that was it. I've got a Toyota Prius at the moment as well in the driveway. I could have taken that, they wouldn't have been fussed. When I had the Buzz, however, they all wanted to get in it, they all wanted to be in that, and that's the difference with that car. You know, it's a family car, it's part of the family. This is just a tool. You can also, you know, go to the alternatives, like I was saying right at the very start. You can look at the SUVs that offer up to 7 seats now as well. And of course, the one for me is the Kia EV9, because you can have that in either, you know, a 5, 6 or 7 seat layout, just exactly the same as you can with this car, as you can with the ID Buzz, in fairness. And then you've got your added benefit that you've actually got a big SUV with dual motors. It is actually more practical from that point of view. Okay, the boot's a bit smaller when you've got a load of people in it, but that, irrespective of that, you can always stick a roof box on it if you're really that bothered about it. So yeah, there are just better options out there, I think, if you're a private buyer and you're looking at this. And as I say, even if you're a business user, if you're looking at those, you know, sort of like, you know, those shuttle services that operate these type of cars, again, I just think there are better options available to you. So here's what we like and also what we don't like about the newly revised Mercedes-Benz EQV. What we like is practicality. As a passenger, it is comfortable. It's reasonably well equipped. The Mercedes-Benz MBUX infotainment system is actually really good and quite easy to use. And from a driver and front passenger point of view, we do like the interior design. We don't like, well, there's no getting away from it, it is just too expensive. It has very poor range, charging speeds and efficiency. The ride could be better. And more than ever, it feels like a van, especially against newer competition. I'm not sure I've come across a bigger barometer of how fast the EV world has changed than the Mercedes-Benz EQV. Because bear in mind, it was just 4 short years ago that I road tested this car and stood here to you and said to you, quite like this, there's a lot to like about this car. And in some respects, there is still some things to like about it. However, it's now over £90,000 for something that will barely do 200 miles. And when you do stop to charge it up, it takes over 40 minutes to put just a small amount of miles back into the car. It doesn't really offer anything really surprise and delight features as well for the private buyer, for the family person, you know, in the back, you know, it is just space that you're buying. And you're having to pay a huge amount of money for that space. So there's no way I can stand here and say that I think this for the private buyer is a better option than something like a Kia EV9 or a Volvo EX90 that's coming, or Mercedes-Benz own EQS SUV, it's 7-seat SUV. And if you're hell-bent on not owning an SUV and you must have an MPV, then why would you not buy a Volkswagen Buzz long wheelbase over something like this? And I do get it from the sort of, like, you know, the private hire firm type of thing. You know, as I say, there's a lot to maybe think about when you're looking at something like this. You just want that amount of space. But then you can buy that amount of space and electric form for a lot less money. However, I will end on a slight positive in some respects, because what I will say is I'm brought back to that memory as I have a couple of weeks ago, being sort of like whisked from Barcelona airport into the centre of the city in one of these. And as I say, there's a huge amount of space in it. You're able to sit and talk with your colleagues and all the rest of it. So maybe from that point of view, it's a car that is better to be driven in than to drive. But it's certainly not a car that I can recommend that's good to own. Thank you for watching another road test review on AutoEV. As always, please make sure that you are subscribed to the AutoEV channel. Then once you've done that, make sure you then press the little bell button that's down below, because that's the way you'll receive notification of when our next video is uploaded and it's gone live. If you have enjoyed this week's review, then make sure you give it a little thumbs up, and of course don't forget, leave me your thoughts in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think about the newly revised Mercedes-Benz EQV. Do you own one of these? Do you run one? What made you buy it? Do you like it? Have you thought to yourself, actually, times have changed, there are now better options out there for me? Do you own one or a fleet of them as a private hire operator? What's good about them? What's not so good about them? Let me know all of that in the comment section down below. Now remember, we're also across on all social media platforms, so Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. So we're there as well if you want to give us a follow there. That certainly helps the channel. And if you're in the marketplace for an electric car, might not be a new Mercedes-Benz EQV, maybe you're looking at a second-hand one. Never know. But you need to know all there is to know about it. How do you find out? Well, let me tell you how. Stay on the AutoEV YouTube channel, and on the homepage, just at the top there's a little magnifying glass. And if you type the name of the car that you're interested in that little search bar, then if it's been a new electric car that's been launched in the UK in the last 6 years, then of course we've subjected it to the road test that actual car buyers trust when it comes to choosing their next electric vehicle. And that, folks, is the AutoEV one. Thanks again for watching. Thank you for your continued support. I'll see you again soon.